Thank you for coming back from lunch, although I think it's actually seems to me that everybody's been eating lunch all morning, which is fine. There's a great buzz out there, lots of good, cool conversations going on. I'm super excited to be here because this is a pretty universal topic that people can really relate to. Social media we know is interwoven into our lives pretty deeply. But it's also a pretty significant problem. It's supremely hackable. It's messing with our minds. It's owned by the wrong people. We don't get paid for using it. And if you think about trying to bridge, and we just had the panel on DeFi, real-world assets into the Web3 world. What is a greater real-world asset than humans themselves? It's a currency that you build over your lifetime. Can get destroyed in a day, and indeed people can be the problem, but I think people are, unsurprisingly, a very pivotal part of the solution here. It might even sort of solve some of the challenges in DeFi around KYC, AML, if it's done properly. But how do we, with a few questions we're going to try and address here, which is, I think the first one is, and we were just hearing a little bit about it on the DeFi panel. What is the unique impact that Web3 social can create that can possibly allow us to break the kind of vice-like grip that the network effects in today's social media have over us? And what are the new capabilities? What's the new business model? What are the challenges that exist today? And how can this panel, but also how we can all help address those. So I'm going to switch now quickly to some intros, starting with Tommy at the end from Favor, who is building on Lens, which is built by Stanley to his left, so hopefully he'll give him some frank feedback about how that's all going. But Tommy, over to you first.
GM, sirs and sirs is on my side as well. So my name is Tommy. I'm the co-founder and CFO of Favor. We are very glad and proud to be part of the Lens ecosystem, and privileged to be here, alongside with the early pioneers of the space. Stani having built Ethereum in Finland and scaling DeFi globally, and kudos to Fabric Ventures and Backed. So I know Fabric has had a long-term thesis on open economy, as well as to a bunch of my schoolmates who kicked off Slush plus 10 years ago, so Miki et al. And co. So quickly on Favor, we are one of the major apps on Lens protocol, have about 30,000 daily active users right now, and in addition to being kind of application layer on Lens, we want to also kind of build on the rails that Sandeep and his team on Polygon and what Stani has been building on top of that on Lens, to build integrations and kind of more abstract pipelines when it comes to NFT communities, etc. So very happy to be here sharing our thoughts on Web3 social.
Thanks, Tommy. Checking if this actually works, so I'm going to leave. Thanks for having me in the panel again.
My pleasure.
But so obviously with Lens protocol, what we've been doing is that Aave always been about creating access. So with the Aave protocol, it's more of access to finance, global markets, and like fair, equal opportunity. And something we found out now with the Web3 ecosystem is that we're going beyond the financial applications. So if you think about the narrative in the beginning, Bitcoin, for example, it tried to solve a problem with having peer-to-peer payments between users across globally without intermediaries. So by using the blockchain, and that's basically the start of using this tech, solving financial challenges. And I think decentralized finance has done pretty well of continuing that narrative and creating a financial ecosystem. And now I think what we've been focusing quite a lot is actually what we need to do to go beyond DeFi to get more adoption for Web3 and bring more ownership. So the way I see it is that like Web 1, read-only, right? So, or this is how we people who are in Web3 try to explain to each other and to our friends how Web3 is different. So Web 1 is read-only, right? So that's the home pages that you serve across the internet on browsers and search engines that doesn't exist anymore. Web 2 is about how you can contribute to this magnificent infrastructure of the internet. You know, how you could actually share your opinions, connect with people across the globe, and do it very effectively. And that's how we have big centralized platforms to make it very efficient. Web 3 is for us about, you know, what about if you could actually, you know, be a part of owner of the internet and have a stake on how the future is built within these communities. And also with the Lens protocol, we're trying to bring that access to ownership for you, for your social capital. And just to give an example what social capital is, because it's such a big word to words, is that, you know, we create constantly relationships. So for example, if you borrow some sugar from your neighbor without paying for it, that's based on your social capital. And the difference between social capital and, let's say, financial is that with financial capital, some people have it, but social capital is something that everyone has. As you mentioned, Richard, basically having yourself as a real-world asset and the value you can create. And Lens protocol now, as more and more interaction go online, so there's 5 billion internet users and almost equal amount of social media users. We are trying to actually give that ownership for the users by creating a protocol where you can actually own your social media profile, your follower base, and then you can build any exciting applications on top, as we've seen with Favor. And I think that's kind of like the our like a mission and introduction to what Lens is.
Thanks, Danny. Suji.
Hello. Is that working?
Can you hear him?
Can you hear him?
Can you hear?
No? Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Suji from Mass Network. We started jumping to the Web3 social around late 2017, when there was nearly no one was doing Web3 social. My definition of Web2, Web3, definitely, you know, read right on, but it's from more ideology perspective, you can view Web2 as the medieval feudalism Europe, that everyone worked for a king, like King Zuckerberg, King Jack Dorsey, and then you're free to go. You can just say, hey, I'm gonna just jump into another land, but your asset gonna just stuck there, right? Your friends, your social graph gonna stuck with King Zuckerberg, and you're not gonna migrate that from King Zuckerberg, King Facebook, Kingdom Facebook to Kingdom Twitter. Then Web3 actually enlightened with more early version of capitalism that you can able to, no matter you like it or not, you can able to trade it, right? And then just change it for value. Then when we started is 2017, 2018 is pretty early. I think it's almost the same time when DeFi was a concept. Then we are trying to say, we don't really know what's going to be the final stage of Web3 social, but we know there has to be a bridge to connect the Web 2 and the Web 3. People like us may be nerdy enough to figure out what's going on, but like my parents, my grandma, they were always stuck in Facebook and WeChat, right? They have to find a way to out. So Mask start to build extensions and other middlewares that are able to eventually vampire attack Twitter, and then they make the social graph owned by the people. Very interestingly, we got approached by people close to Blue Sky when 2019 December, when Jack Dorsey announced the Blue Sky thing. We were quite surprised as well. I think the next thing you're gonna get is a fire letter from the board, which is true. We become the community member of Blue Sky, founding community member. And we witness how this internal experiment failed has to become an external experiment. And then 2022, I think late 2021, Jadasi was fired by the board. Then we see Elon came in, right? It's, more funny stuff happened. This is our experience, and MAVIS is already listed and trading, and we start to donate and grant for more projects. Because I think social is not going to be done by one protocol or just two protocols. I think it's going to be done by 100 protocols. Just like how we have the money Lego in DeFi, we're going to have the social Lego. Everything going to able to interact with each other, and then abstract value from those cyber feudalism kingdoms, and eventually build people's own web, right? Yeah.
Super. So that was already very comprehensive, personal introductions from everybody. We pretty much sort of covered most of the topics. And look, it is a very serious topic, but let's try and be, in the panel and the audience as radical and have as much fun with it as we possibly can. So please start thinking of your questions. And I think we can all probably agree that we don't want to be slaves or serfs. But the reality is that people stayed in that situation for hundreds, if not thousands of years historically. There has to be a bridge, as Suji was just referring to, perhaps from the Web 2 world, or there perhaps has to be a fundamentally better experience and a way of solving the empty room problem, getting the flywheel going around that, such that we can make that transition. So maybe going back down through everybody, and revisiting something you mentioned, Stanley, that question of ownership. How is it that capability, owning different elements of your social presence, and maybe even marketing it, having a layer that allows you to market it continuously, how is that going to lead to fundamentally, unique experiences, different user behaviors, and new social networks, even if they're joined together? So thoughts on that? Whoever wants to go.
Well, I quickly say that, with the ownership, what's fascinating is that you really change the dynamic. So, for example, when you use bigger social media platforms today, you really build a lot of capital there. So you interact with different users. You might be commenting. You might be creating content. You might be a creator that is even using a specific platform for earning pretty much your revenue. And I think a big interesting thing for me about open networks is that many of these creators and users, they're really stuck in many of these platforms for various reasons. But one important thing is that you really can't, if you don't align with the application, let's say, the policies they have, content moderation, let's say trust and safety, or even as a brand, for example. We recently saw Balenciaga pretty much deleting their account from Twitter because of their perspective of the brand safety. So what's interesting here is that all that effort that you have created is actually then they're stuck in the platform. And interestingly, like many of the social media platforms, they could actually create a standard to pretty much transport your follower base, your data into another place, but the way the dynamics work in these platforms is that you want to create strong network effects. So you want to create algorithms that keep you coming back and keep you contributing more of that social capital. And I think when you really are not stuck in one particular platform, but you have an open network, that changes those dynamics completely, because now it's actually the user who has the power and deciding which applications they're using. And that's the reason why, for example, applications like Favor are iterating constantly. And even on the protocol level, there's constant iterations, because you can always fork the protocol. And there's this kind of like an open sense of bringing the value back to the user, and the user being the epicenter of social media and having that power. And that means then anyone can actually create new algorithms as well. So, if you don't like what one application is providing for you, you can switch your algorithm, switch the applications, and actually use the applications that you're most align to. And I think that's going to be like the biggest value for open networks.
I think it'd be great to build on that. I think a lot of people, it's lost on them, or it hasn't dawned on them yet, the marketplace for the features and the algorithms and so forth. Go on, Tommy.
Yeah, so maybe to echo on Stani's points, and kind of the Lens team put it best, like not your keys, not your content, but you also need kind of a burning platform kind of moment happening. So I think, I kind of feel sorry for Elon pulling the trigger at the worst possible moment, like, before the inflation hits, so you buy an asset at 44 billion, probably might be worth 20 billion just because of macro. You put 13 billion debt on it. So I think there's a lot of things happening in Twitter, which kind of are hasty decisions, like we saw what happened with BlueTick. We should speak about the ZK proof that Lens protocol is planning on doing. But I think there's a lot of kind of movement happening in there. And I think this has to happen also through kind of content creators and big KOLs kind of moving and maybe doing exclusive content on Lens and on the other apps. So I think we had just the Linkin Park singer Mike Shinoda joining Lens over this week. So that's a good testament of, like, actually people, important people moving on and believing in the thesis of the ownership. And we can speak a bit more about kind of how I think the creator incentives are a bit inverse, but I'll leave Suji to kind of continue on this topic first.
Suji.
Yeah, I mean, like, one problem we witnessed in the Web2 social network, there was a terminology called Twitterverse. If anyone remember, that means you're old enough, right? That Twitterverse was around 2009 to 2012 until Twitter go IPO, and then this thing was gone. Like, there was a time you can build whatever you want on Twitter. People invented hashtag and then all this amazing functionality on Twitter. Then last time, it's the last time Jack was fired, and then we see some other business CEO came in, closed all the API. That actually was a honeypot for creators and for developer. Like, hey, dude, come here and we build something together. Just like the favor today, right? Just build something on top of a protocol. And then when they changed the CEO, all the thing was gone. It is owned by a certain group of people, not owned by the community. While on the other side, the Web3 social protocol cannot do that. I mean, like now, even Lens cannot delete favorite, right? They has the freedom of access. And that's quite important. And then writing it on blockchain have another cool functionality is actually people are going to have history on cyberspace. Right now, there was no history on cyberspace. I remember, like, 1996, we have this cool declaration from EFF called Declaration of Independence of Cyberspace. Right? We claim the cyberspace is independent, superseding nation state, and they figure out, oh, there was no history because everything can be deleted, right? And you weren't able to verify what is true, what is not true if these things get deleted, right? And right now, if you want to access and try to verify what Donald Trump really tweeted, you have to go to Twitter server, and they definitely can refuse your access, right? So that something was terrible. It's also related with the censorship on the social network, which I think we are in a huge dilemma that to censor, we lose the freedom of speech. And if we don't censor, that we actually allow people to post racist shit, right, on Twitter. So that's a big dilemma, and I think what's really going to solve that the protocol don't censor, the front end can do that, yeah.
And we should definitely come on to some of the challenges, the things that are not yet solved, but I don't want to let us off the hook on this question of, what is going to, catalyze this change today, now? What are the apps that we're going to build? And I think we've said, look, this is an open and permissionless environment. That means there can be marketplaces, innovation that can layer on top of each other in a way that just simply doesn't exist within something like Twitter, but also that you take out the platform risk. So those developers are incentivized to commit and invest in the platform. That's all great, but that's still just like a petri dish of innovation somewhere within which we need to find a reason to make the jump. So is there going to be a new type of feed? Is it something maybe to do with the business model? I mean, the fact that you've got some fundamentally different economics here. Who wants to talk about how the business model might operate here? Is it the same but distributed? How does it work?
Well, I think one thing which is I think you could take the Twitch model, where Twitch was able to move a lot of creators there because they can earn more. So if you look at, I was just running some numbers last night to kind of try to market size the creator economy. So let's start with Facebook. They have 90 billion revenue, 1 billion creator fund. Take YouTube, 7 billion revenue, okay, 50% maybe roughly goes to creators. That's 3 billion more. You take affiliate marketing models like Xiaohongshu, Red in China, maybe another 3 billion. Of course, there is stuff like OnlyFans. They actually made 3.86 billion last year. But I think like overall, the figure is like low double digits that goes to creators, as opposed to the platforms taking hundreds of billions. So I think this is almost like an inverse of the take rate of a typical marketplace. So I think business model-wise, that can be a very powerful thing, because then if you can prove that the creators can earn more in the new social media, that's how you create the better content. That's how you move the creators, and then everyone else kind of moves along. So I think that's one of the biggest things. I think NFT itself is probably a very misunderstood concept. So Stani used NFTs to actually build a backend. Most people still think it's just a PFP. I think like NFT is a kind of unique relation on blockchain, and it has like wide properties that are yet to be capitalized on. So I think that's also like a big opportunity to kind of build new things in this open source software, open economy, open network, which we can collectively do together.
So can I just try and push it along? So great. So we've got, perhaps we can switch it around so there's more fees or revenue available for the creators. But how does that actually work? If I'm a user/creator and I'm producing a bunch of content which is actually expressed in NFTs, how do I get my hands on some?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think like if you think about any social network, like typically advertising is the biggest source of revenue. You might have some adjacent marketplaces. You might have the Patreon, Substack. So I think one way or another, you need to bring the brands in, but it shouldn't be the invasive Facebook spying on you, on your GPS, all of this stuff. So I think, for example, with the paid collects on Lens, or with other things where you can kind of more directly make people benefit from being part of the network, you could also kind of make this revenue share from the advertising to be more fair. So these are the things that we are, thinking about, day in, day out at Favor as well, how to enable this model, because ultimately the money needs to come from somewhere. And I think like it's more about how you tweak that model to be more fair and channel those cash flows in a different fashion.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because like with Lens protocol, so how it works is that all the user-generated content that you are publishing all the time, so you can actually tokenize them as NFTs. So after the tokenization, you can actually decide as a creator whether you want to have them as free NFTs or let's say as paid collects. So for example, if you create art or music, you can actually publish it directly on the Lens protocol to your audience, your follower base. And because it's built on smart contracts, you can add different kinds of verified logic. So it can be, for example, that only my followers or followers between 1 and 100 can collect this particular NFT. So it's kind of like a simple monetization that has been built in just as an experimentation. Currently, for all those people who are actually actively using these monetization mechanisms, and not only the free NFT collects within the Lens protocol, they're earning per profile on average 20 Matic, which is, I don't know where Matic's price is today, but anyways, it's compared to traditional social media applications where we come from a place where the users aren't earning anything. You're basically creating content, you're creating the social capital, and you're making the network. And there's a very good old saying in social media space that you kind of are the product, because if you're not paying for it, you're basically somehow consuming the product and paying for the advertisements. And I think what's fascinating is that it's just one mechanism, but because it's an open network, you can build all kinds of monetization. So maybe that content that you create, it's not only a post of your latest music that you drop, but also when you collect it, maybe a record is sent to you in form of vinyl if you are a vinyl collector, or maybe if you collect, NFT of digital sneakers, you get also a physical item delivered to you. So there is sort of things you can actually build on top of that. But like, I think the base thing, what we're saying is that, it's not those platforms that are deciding how you should monetize, but it's actually you. And because networks are open and anyone can contribute and build new things, what happens is that we will see the innovation. So I always think that, building Web3, especially social media, is very hard. And I think that we will not see necessarily like replacements for Twitter, replacements for Facebook. We actually will see new interest graphs being built and novel ideas of how to interact with the content. And those applications will bring more people. And I think it also applies to all Web3. So, it's not necessarily the onboarding. It's just like what makes it interesting, fun to use and the use cases. And that brings more people.
So we have to kind of basically wrap up, but I'm going to wrap it up and then have a super rapid fire question for somebody who puts their hand up. Suji was starting to kind of expand on that. I think we've heard how some of the power of this space, but there's a lot of configuration required. I think configuration of this from a user perspective will remain a big challenge, along with the points raised by Suji around how do you get a consensus around facts for fact check, and how do you get a consensus around hate even. I think these are problems, but also areas for innovation. So hopefully maybe there's one question with a super rapid fire answer. This guy was quickest in the middle here, I think. Or maybe we can just do your question, they can give a super quick answer to all of them.
So when you publish or post or collect anything from Lens protocol, how you, I think everybody here has posted something they delete after posting. What comes to the data privacy? Like when you do something that dumb and it's in public ledger, what's the...
Perfect, yeah. Privacy in a public ledger. Someone who's near to the mic, quick.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Quick question. So Twitter banned Trump and Jordan Peterson and became the moral police. So what do you guys do? Does community take care of censorship?
Got it, yeah. Censorship, hate, truth, and the rest of it. So super fast answers, Suji, go. About privacy in a public ledger and consensus around truth, hate. Does that say make Twitter a protocol? Yeah. Good idea. The Elon drop, if anyone's read about that, that's what we should do. Okay, that was Tommy, you go.
So in favor, you can choose whether you post on chain or not. So you can kind of, based on the situation, if you're making a drunk post, then maybe don't hit post on Lens. I think it's a great question in terms of community censorship, because it's always a trade-off between freedom of speech versus censorship. There's a lot of interesting things like the Cultivator DAO. My co-founder Jonathan is part of it, where we try to kind of balance, have the community's view of what level of censorship should be done. And I think this will also done through kind of different principles through different apps. For example, we need to be App Store compliant, so we need to kind of have certain level of censorship.
Stanley?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think definitely you should have the ability for choice, whether you post on chain. Pretty much all of the transactions actually Lens protocol, they're not on chain, they're on chain transactions, but actually the reflection of where the content is varies between cloud to IPFS to RV. So there's things that you can actually choose in terms of the level of how much you want to memorialize a post. And I think it's something that requires also education, in the sense that, you really should be careful what you are putting on chain when it comes to the actual content. And I think it's having the choice to either put on chain or not is very valuable. And then regarding the trust and safety, I think it has to be community driven. And the Cultivator DAO is a good example where there's a group of people from the community that care about trust and safety. But at the same time, the idea of Cultivator DAO is to fork Cultivator DAO. So you can create your own trust and safety community, and there shouldn't be one single truth of what's basically like opinions, and that's where I think the value comes, because it's all community driven.
Perfect. Innovation at every level, diversity of opinions. Sorry that we have Stanley on every panel. Sorry that we don't have a more diverse panel, but I hope that got you excited and whet your appetite. Thank you very much. Thanks to the panelists.
Thank you.